So Bill and Ted Face the Music. The third film in the Bill and Ted series, so now it's officially a trilogy. And this film kind of more or less continues kind of this theory that if you want to do a sequel to a film, you should maybe wait about like 3 decades. Like, we've had this happen before with Blade Runner and Mad Max, and it seems to work here because it seems like we come back to Bill and Ted with just enough, I think, just enough to satisfy fans, and just enough to be worthy to bring back Bill and Ted to see them once again. So of course, it's been about 30 years since like the first film, and roughly about that since the last film, Bogus Journey. And a lot has changed for Bill and Ted. They've both married princesses from the 1400s. Their band, Wild Stallions, they seem to be focused on trying to make that one song that'll unite the world, but they haven't quite found it yet. They had a little bit of a breaking up. Like, Bill and Ted are still together, but they didn't quite work things out with Death. Like Death just wasn't gelling with the band, so they kind of went their separate ways. So Bill and Ted are, once again reprised by Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter, looking a lot older to be doing the whole, dudisms, rather. But here's what I like about this film. It kind of ages them up. Like, they're, this was kind of my biggest problem with the sequel to Dumb and Dumber, is that, it takes place so many years after the fact, and these characters are still kind of behaving the same way they are back then, and they haven't really progressed or anything. And it feels like they have here. Like, I mean, for one, they've married, they've had daughters, they named their daughters Billy and Thea, and they're pretty much like the female Bill and Ted. Like, they're real chips off the old block. They have similar mannerisms to the way they talk. They're obsessed with music. They have a rebellious nature to them, and they're sweet. They have I was gonna say, like, they're a little bit dim-witted, but here's the interesting thing. This film is actually surprisingly smart. Like, it realized that, look, if you're gonna continue Bill and Ted, they can't just be the stupid teenagers. They have to have some progression. You can make them a little bit oblivious, and I love how their obliviousness plays a key role in how they have to save the world here. Because the central story is it's just like a silly adventure. Like, the whole idea is that the future's in trouble, like, because all reality could end if Bill and Ted don't play the one song that'll unite the world, and apparently now fix reality. So they're basically tasked with doing this, and there are two adventures that go on here that I think come together well. Like, the first main adventure is between Bill and Ted, where they decide that, in order to find, like, this one song that'll unite the world, like, we've been doing it for so many decades, and we haven't gotten it right yet. Well, what if we just skip ahead to the future where we already did it? Which is mind-bending and trippy, and it makes about as much sense as trying to theorize why the universe will collapse if they don't play the greatest song ever. But, like, you just kind of, like, go with it. I mean, like, Bill and Ted seem to go with it. It seems like they could be easily overwhelmed, but then you think about it, it's like, no, these guys they've been to hell. They've been to the edge of the universe. They've traveled across time. It seemed like they should be used to this more or less to an extent by now, and they kind of are. And I like that about their characters. Like, they've given them just enough intelligence where it feels like they know what they're doing, because they're smart enough to figure out, how to twist around, like, time travel to work to their benefit. It doesn't quite work out for them because they have to learn a bigger lesson in the end, which is really neat. But then you have the secondary story, where their kids of Billy and Thea have to basically go back. They decide to go back in time to grab the best musicians of the world and bring them back to the present so that they can play the greatest song ever. So they go get Jimi Hendrix, they go get Louis Armstrong, they get Mozart, they grab so many different figures. So it's essentially kind of more or less, like the story of, like, the first Bill and Ted, except they're, now their daughters go back in time. And the thing is, like, I like the element of, like, family. There's a sweetness to it that you can't deny, or even when it is kind of bumbling, and even when it is kind of going through, like, some of the motions that you kind of expect this adventure to go through. It actually kind of warms your heart, even though it seems like a lot of it, there is definitely a lot of playing up of nostalgia here, and not just for like, like picking out elements here. There's a lot of stuff where I think nostalgia is going to play a key role in how much you love this film. In particular, they brought back William Sadler to play the Grim Reaper once more, and he doesn't really have too much to do. He's kind of introduced in like the third act, like they talk about him in the beginning and the kind of like the behind the music type of intro they do. But for the most part, he's just kind of there for just like sweet little bits. Like, I mean, he helps out with the plot a little bit in the third act, but it's just kind of him being quirky and having fun and making little jokes there. And it's absolutely adorable. But the thing is, that kind of goes for like the rest of the plot too. Like I mentioned that the story with the daughters is kind of like parallel to the first film, except within the first film, you found a lot more funny stuff to do with the characters. And I feel like because like there's such like a race or a race to save the world here, like they literally time it out. Look, you've only got like, there's only 77 minutes left in the movie. You've got to work fast here. So there's not a lot of time in this to really appreciate the absurdity of having, all these historical figures come into the present and then interact with all this crazy stuff and be wowed by it. Like there's a brief bit where Louis Armstrong looks at a smartphone video and just thinks, wow, what is this? But it's very brief because the film is in such a rush to make all like this twisty time travel logic work. I would very much kind of consider this film very much akin to like Back to the Future Part 2, in which it's a film where you kind of just got to go with it, but at the same time there's all this very intricate assembly here to make like the whole time travel aspect work. Where if you think about this way too much, it'll just drive you nuts. It'll make your brain explode. So on that level, like, I could kind of be a little bit aggravated by it at times by the fact that it gets just a tad expositional here and there. But I think it's the characters ultimately that really make this film work. I mean, Reeves, Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves, they still have that charm to them where you kind of want them to succeed, and they want the best for everyone. They want everyone to be excellent to each other. And even when it seems like their marriage is on the rocks in this, and like they're trying to figure out how to both save the world and save their marriage, it feels like they fumble through this, but it always feels like they're trying to do the best that they can. Like, for one thing, like, ultimately they have to learn that, they love their wives, and not just that it's like this collective bonding thing. Like, they schedule couples therapy, they intentionally schedule couples therapy together just because they consider themselves that much friends of each other. But even then, like, they kind of more or less realize that they're doing something wrong, even if they have to have future selves tell them. They realize that, oh man, we do have to make this work. And it's not one of those things where they learn it at the last minute. They know it as they go, so that it gets even more twisty when you consider that there's a third storyline kind of going on in the background where their wives are traveling through time, and we don't really address it too much because it's kind of like paralleling with the rest of the plot. It's kind of like we're only seeing this from Bill and Ted's perspective, while their wives are basically going into the future to find a version of their marriage that will work. So very, very mind-bending. But like I said, the sweetness holds up. I like the whole idea that music can save the day, and ultimately the big message that that music all around the world could save the entire universe, with this really weird plan to basically create. I'm trying to find the best way to describe it. To basically make infinity Bill and Ted's that will somehow like save the world by giving everyone music. It's bizarre. It's ridiculous. But damn, is it heartwarming? Like it's so sweet. There's a lot of great actors here who have just the right amount of charisma here. I mean, you have Katie Sagal playing the daughter of Rufus. She doesn't really, like, I kind of expected her to kind of like break out and get crazy, but no, she's actually kind of as refined as Rufus. Like, she has her moments of snark and where she gets like a little pissed off at other characters. There's even like we and like I said, there's a lot of nostalgia here, so we visit a lot of familiar, not just like familiar characters, but places. Like, we go back to hell at one point in the film, But the thing is, like, we're in such a rush, we don't really have a chance to appreciate the absurdity of hell. Like if you remember in Bogus Journey, you know, when we first get to hell with Bill and Ted, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying when they're there. And here it's just like, oh, I guess we're in hell. We'll just wait for Bill and Ted to come and save us, I guess, and maybe we'll talk to death along the way. So, so it's like, this film, like the stakes, like they feel high, but they feel like kind of standard and grounded. You know, like, you know, we have to save the world, we have to play the best music, and we also have to save our relationship with our family. Ridiculous but sweet. I absolutely adore this film. I don't think it's gonna hold up as well as the rest of the trilogy. Like honestly, between like all three of these films, I think Face the Music might be the weakest, but only by just a little bit. Like there's just enough like charisma and charm and sweetness, I think, in this film, and a few original tweaks they make to the timeline here and there that I think make it work just enough to warrant bringing Bill and Ted back. Like, I know everyone gets like tired of like remakes and sequels and all that, but like I said, like we've seen with sequels that take a while to come to us, you know, stuff like Blade Runner and Mad Max, they tend to come back with something to say. And I think there's enough worth saying within Bill and Ted Face the Music that it's a fun film. It's a nice capper to the trilogy. Like, if this is the last adventure we have to have with Bill and Ted, it's pretty damn good. So yeah, I actually dug it. So for Bill and Ted Face the Music, 3.5 out of 5 stars.